Hello, in this video we'll go through the basic steps for basic solar studies. So let's get started. To start with, I will go under the Manage tab in Revit and I will search for the location button. This button basically will allow me to give geo coordinates of the building that I'm studying. So as soon as I click here, a new window pops up, and here I have the possibility to add a very precise project address. I could go a little bit open-ended and just add Manhattan, New York, or Brooklyn, New York, or I can be very precise and type here the address of Pratt Institute, since our gallery space is within the campus. So as soon as I hit search, you can see here that already I am located within the campus. That's good enough. So I will just hit OK to accept the settings. As a second step, what I recommend that you always do is that you start orienting the actual building, in our case the gallery space, towards the true north. There are two different ways that Revit works. The very first one is the project north, which is basically the north that the actual project template has set up for us. And this, as you can imagine, follows the X and Y, so you guys can design and draw lines, walls, architectural elements easily in the perpendicular axis. On the other hand, though, we know that each building is oriented differently. So let's go ahead and set this up. I always like to make this change through the side view. So you can come here, select the side view, and then go under the actual properties of the view itself and search for the orientation option. So by default, the orientation object is Project North, but you also have the possibility to change that to True North, and we can apply. Right now, though, of course, we haven't really set up the actual True North. To do so, I will go back again under the Manage tab, and I will search for the Position button. And I will go to the second option here, which is basically rotation, in order to find the true north. Before I do that, I will first have, of course, to see approximately what is the rotation of my building. I can pull out Google Maps very fast, and I can write down something like Pratt Institute here. I have it in my memory. And if you guys zoom in quite a bit, this is the building we're working with, and I think that this is the gallery space itself. So if north is oriented all the way up perpendicularly, then we are, let's say, a little bit offset of the north, counterclockwise. So keeping that in mind, I will go ahead and I will rotate my building in such a way that the storefront, which is basically this facade, I can already see here my curtain wall. So this should be oriented approximately to the north itself. So I will go ahead and rotate, let's say 110 or something like that degrees. And now I get an axis that's a little bit offset of the actual vertical axis of my north. Great, so now I have set up the true north, and I can always go back and forth through the properties. I can go back to the project north if I want to keep working without really losing the X and Y axis, since it's easier for me. And of course I can go back to the true north. Here it is, it's safe for me. Now that all of the different geolocations and even the north has been set up for my file, I can go ahead and select any 3D view. Here I am, of my building, and start working with solar analysis. Already the building is updated based on the true north, so you shouldn't really worry about rotating that view to the true north itself. You will even realize that there is no true north. There is no north option basically in the properties of any 3D view. Okay, so before I get started with the solar analysis, I always like to duplicate the views, so I could have different 3D views for different purposes. So I will go ahead and duplicate this one, and I will even rename it. And I will call this one, let's say, solar study summer. Okay. Now, I think I have hidden some of the elements of my geometry. I will go very, very fast under the reveal button, the light bulb, as you guys know it. And whatever is magenta is hidden, so I will select my walls. I will right click and I will say unhide the category. And also my roof, I need it there. So let's unhide the category as well. The rest of the line seems to be my massing. I could even delete the massing. I don't need it anymore. I'm done basically with the project definition. So these are all of the masses that I brought in from the conceptual mass and from Rhino, of course. And I think I'm doing good. I will go back, so I will turn off the light bulb. And here I have my geometry somehow completed. In order to move on with the sun analysis and studies, I will go all the way down to the sub options, and right next to the visual button, the visual appearance, visual style button, I have the sun path button and the shadows. First thing I want to do is to turn on my shadow. So I will just click here, and already I will get a very first understanding of the shadows that this building is casting to the ground, but also why not shadows in the interior of the space from one wall to a slab. In order to get a better understanding of the interior shades, I could very, very fast override the visibility, the transparency, options from the visibility and graphics menu. If you guys remember, the visibility and graphics menu is located under the View tab, visibility and graphics, or the shortcut is VV. Great, so I will just type W and I will go all the way down to my walls. I will go under the transparency of surfaces option, and I will override that from 0 to something like, let's say 30. Let's hit OK to that. So I can already see within my space and get a better understanding of the shadows. I would like to do that, the same thing for my roof. So I will go back to the same menu, VV, and I will type R, and here is my roof, and I will override the transparency, let's say to 25. Okay to that, and now I see a little bit more further inside. Great. For the solar studies, I always recommend that you guys work with parallel projection and precisely isometric drawings. So use here the corner of your navigation button, just so you can get an actual axonometry itself. I wouldn't go with perspective drawings, certainly not, because we don't really need depth. These are more diagrammatic studies. Okay, great. The second step for the actual solar analysis will be to go under the sun path and go under the sun settings. So here you can see that Revit gives you a few of default settings, the simpler one being the still image. So with this option, we will end up exporting from Revit one frame of a specific date and a specific time of that day. Yeah. Also, you have the possibility, instead of exporting just a still image or a still, let's say, frame, to go into a single day and start recording what is the sun behavior throughout the day. So you can select again a very specific day, and you can select even the time frame. You can even go with the default setting of sunrise to sunset, so you get a full day study. And of course, you can give a time interval from 1 hour to 15 minutes. Take a note, 1 hour, the frames you will get will be 10. If you go with 15 minutes, obviously we get more frames, almost 40 frames. Be careful with that, because Revit generates heavy files. You can export an animation file with the sun, but it's going to be very heavy. That said, the less frames you export, the easier it will be for you to share this file. Lastly, I always recommend that you keep the ground plane at your lower level. If you start elevating the plane, then obviously the shadows will be casted differently. Together with a single day in the exact same logic is the multi-day option, where you can have more than one day. Let's say you can place here a full week and then sunrise to sunset for each day of the week. And then of course you can give different intervals. Obviously the 15 minutes is not here as a default anymore, because that would be crazy, no? So you can give day, hour, day, week, and month intervals. Also, here in the second category of this menu, you have the 4 different default settings: the spring, summer, fall, and winter studies. And for our class, for panel number 2, we want you to export all of those 4 different seasons. So what we will be doing for the class is that you will be going under the still image, and here you can select, for example, to start with the summer, and then the winter, then the spring, and then the fall, respectively. So let's start with the summer option. I like to keep the time always at noon because it's more or less in the very middle of the day. And here, of course, by default, summer is on the 6th month. Okay, so I will hit OK to that. And obviously right now my shadows are updated. And why not? Let's also, from the exact same menu, let's turn on the sun path. So now we can see, we can get an approximation of the beginning of the day, 4:26 a.m., the end of the day, 7:28 p.m. This is a summer day, of course, it's a big day. And here you can see the location of the sun at 12 p.m., noon. And you can even manually start moving that to different places. Great. So if you're happy with the solar study of the summer season, still frame as we said, you can export that always following the exact same process we have been doing so far. So you can go under the application button, print. You want to print a PDF. You want to select the view. I renamed the view to Solar Study Summer. So I want to hit OK to that. I don't want to save it. And then I will go under the setup. And following the exact same rules, let's make sure that it's centered to our paper. I don't think you need a paper bigger than letter size because, as you can imagine, those diagrams will be placed very, very small within your board. You can zoom to 100% if you're interested in keeping scale. I do think that you won't really have specific scale. You can shrink those diagrams to be very, very small. So I will just fit to page for now. The last thing I want you to remember is, although here it is selected the vector processing, whenever you turn on shadows, unfortunately there is a direct translation from the software to raster information. Okay, so you won't be able to export any more lines, you will be exporting pixels. That said, make sure that before you hit OK, the raster quality is under presentation. No need to change from vector to raster. Anyways, the source will be working with raster information. Okay, so presentation is the most important thing you have to remember here. And I will hit OK to that. And OK, let's continue. And I will save here. And here's what I just generated. I will zoom in. And if I zoom in quite a bit, you will realize, of course, that unfortunately the resolution is not as great. Although it's a PDF, still those lines are not lines anymore, they are pixels. So be careful if you want to present this type of diagrams in bigger size. For our course, this is excellent because we anyways want them to be really tiny and very diagrammatic. Great, I will close this PDF, and the next step would be for our course to right click and duplicate this view and rename the view. And let's suppose that now you jump from summer to winter, and you will do the same thing for spring and for fall. And I will go back to the exact same menu, sun settings, and instead of summer I will select winter, 12 p.m., still image, OK to that. Here are the different shadows you get, and I will again export that by printing it as a PDF. Okay, so same steps, and create 4 of those different views for the 4 different seasons. For your general knowledge, if you wanted to export a single day or a multi-day option, let's say single day, sunrise to sunset, and summer, okay? It's a nice summery day, and we want to get an overview of the day. And I will hit OK to that. 16 frames. Here's where the very first shadows will be casted. And now I can even see the animation of the day studies. So I will go ahead and I will preview Solar Study, and I will play that. And of course it's very fast, it's only 16 frames, but you can get a very basic understanding of the shadow path. Great. If you want to export that, you have two options. The first option will be to go under export, of course, and scroll all the way down. You have the option to export images and animations. So the first one would be, okay, let's export an actual video. So Solar Study, and all frames, 15 frames, and you can zoom in, you can change the dimensions, you can even change the visual style. I always like the hidden line because it doesn't really have material and realism within it. And I will hit OK to that. And as you can see now, I can generate an actual AV file, or I could generate JPEG files frame by frame, okay? So let's go with the AV file, which is a video file. I will save it in desktop, save that, and here it's exporting 95%. Great. It's out. Here it is. So I could go ahead and play that. Obviously very fast. And the shocking thing about these files is that they are very, very heavy files, even though they are very short. So right now I generated a file of 70.4 megabytes. So be careful with that. Great, so make sure you export for our board those 4 different still frames and place them small all the way to the bottom of the board. And I will leave it here for now.